Hey, court reporters, we might as well go live now as they are setting up. They are about to announce all of the charges that Diddy is currently facing. Just as a reminder, he was arrested in New York late last night, and it has been quite the doozy. I was listening to Law and Crime Network when they were talking about everything that was really revealed in the indictment once it got unsealed. They actually just unsealed that this morning, and they immediately moved to create this live stream and everything like that. So first of all, they requested that P. Diddy did not get any bail because they believe that he was both a flight risk and a risk of obstructing justice. So according to FBI and Homeland Security, Diddy had been in contact with victims. We'll talk about it later.
About 2 minutes.
Hi, everybody.
If you have any questions about presentment, I'll come back out and we'll go over timing and give you a few updates. Thanks.
All right. So, of course, I will be interrupted from time to time, and I will be giving them priority to speak because that's what we're all here for. But just to give you guys some insight on the side, when the indictment was unsealed, a lot of very shocking information was revealed. So first of all, we talked about them requesting that he didn't get any bail because he was a flight risk. They also said he was a risk of obstructing justice. So according to the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, Diddy, once he knew that this case was coming, it was down the pipeline, he started contacting victims and trying to either intimidate them or mess up their memories of events, like, oh, I know you think this happened, but it's not really the way it went down, that sort of stuff. And so it's a big deal. This is like the first time that I have heard of that being a risk. I've heard of obstruction of justice and things like that, but I've never heard of someone being crazy enough to actually go, especially someone as high profile as P. Diddy. Hi, by the way, I'm so happy that this is working and it's live. Let me know if any audio or anything else like that is amiss. Okay, you guys. So this is the first time that I've heard of someone high profile like a Diddy trying to obstruct justice like that. Like, how crazy can you be? This is insane, you guys. It really, really is. And of course, there still is a lot more that I want to cover here. So in the indictment, none of the victims' names were revealed. So Cassie is not named. Kid Cudi is not named. Don Richards is not named. And a bunch of other people who have come out against him, like Lil Richard, have not been named. So for now, they are keeping those cards close to their chest. Okay. Thank you so much for the hair love, by the way. What else has been out here? So something that was really interesting that jumped out to me.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh,
my name is Damian Williams, and I'm the U.S. Attorney here in the Southern District of New York. Today, I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice. Let me say a little bit more about the charges. The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media. Specifically, Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a victim in a Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to flee. As alleged, these assaults often resulted in injuries to the victims, which took days or weeks to heal. In addition to the violence, the indictment alleges that Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance. Because of all of this, the indictment alleges that the victims did not believe they could refuse Combs without risking their security or facing more abuse. The indictment also alleges other acts of violence undertaken by Combs and others, including violence against witnesses to his abuse, kidnapping, and arson. The indictment alleges that on more than one occasion, Combs carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten victims and witnesses. Now, Combs did not do this all on his own. As I mentioned, Combs has been charged with RICO conspiracy. He used his business and employees of that business and other close associates to get his way. Those individuals allegedly included high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal assistants, security staff, and household staff. The indictment alleges that those individuals facilitated the freak-offs. They booked the hotel rooms and stocked them with the supplies, including drugs, baby oil, personal lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. When the hotel rooms got damaged, they helped clean it up. They arranged for victims and commercial sex workers to travel for the freak-offs, and they delivered large quantities of cash to Combs to pay for the commercial sex workers. The indictment also alleges that they helped Combs cover up his crimes. During the March 2016 incident at the LA hotel that I mentioned earlier, a member of the hotel security staff intervened, and Combs attempted to bribe the staff member with a stack of cash to make sure that what happened was kept quiet. And as the indictment alleges, in late 2023, after public allegations were made about Combs's crimes, he and others pressured witnesses and victims to stay silent, including by making phone calls to witnesses and victims and giving them a false narrative of what they had experienced. And as alleged, Combs used others to help conceal his abuse by monitoring and preventing victims from leaving a location in order to hide their injuries, or by locating and contacting a victim who had attempted to flee. As part of this investigation, in March of this year, special agents from HSI executed search warrants at Combs's residences in Miami and Los Angeles. They also executed a warrant for Combs's electronic devices. During those searches, agents seized evidence of the crimes charged in this indictment. They seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 defaced AR-15s and a large capacity drum magazine. They also seized evidence of the freak-offs, electronic devices that contain images and videos of the freak-offs with multiple victims. And they seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs, more than 1,000 bottles altogether. Here are some of the items that we recovered during the searches. As you can see here, this is a drum magazine, large capacity, and it contains, I believe, 59 rounds. I mentioned as well, we recovered 3 AR-15s. This is a close-up shot of one of the AR-15s, and you can see right here, the serial number has been thoroughly defaced. Another picture of more ammunition and parts of 2 AR-15s right there. Now, I want to be clear about 2 things. First, This office is determined to investigate and prosecute anyone who engages in sex trafficking, no matter how powerful or wealthy or famous you may be. No one should doubt our commitment on that. A year ago, Sean Combs stood in Times Square and was handed a key to New York City. Today, he's been indicted and will face justice in the Southern District of New York. Second, we are not done. This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly. Anyone with information can call 1-877-4-HSI-TIP. I want to express my deep appreciation for the victims and witnesses who have used their voices and helped bring this criminal conduct to light. We would not be here without them. I also want to thank the dedicated case agents on the HSI Trafficking in Person Squad in New York. They have been with us since day one and have worked tirelessly on this investigation. They will continue to be invaluable partners to us. I also want to thank the incredible agents and analysts from SCNY who have also provided tremendous assistance on this case. I'm deeply grateful for their continued work. And finally, I want to thank the outstanding career prosecutors from SCNY who are handling this case. Meredith Foster, Emily Johnson, Chrissy Slavic, Madison Smizer, and Mitzi Steiner, and their supervisors, Jamie Backleeper and Jacqueline Kelly. They are members of the Civil Rights Unit in our criminal division. We created the Civil Rights Unit when I became U.S. Attorney. I'm deeply proud of their work on this and so many other cases. I'll now take some questions.
Wow.
Eric Katursky, ABC.
Wow, wow, wow.
Damian, thanks. The indictment describes aggressive, open, violent, hedonistic abuse that you say was recurrent and widely known. Why did it take law enforcement so long to intervene? How many women were victimized by Sean Combs and how many others were involved?
Look, our investigation is ongoing. We are committed to bringing justice to everyone who's been victimized by the defendant. I can't tell you why it took so long. I think the better focus is on the fact that we are here today. And we are committed to making sure that justice is done. Next question.
Thank you. Julia Ainsley, NBC.
Thank you for doing this. You said we are not done and that Combs did not do this alone. Do you foresee that there could be other charges related to this case?
I'm not taking anything off the table.
Janet Fisher, Newsday.
What's the difference between the sex trafficking and promoting travel for the purpose of prostitution?
Well, there are different crimes with different elements. I don't think we should get into the nitty-gritty of the legal discussion right now, but the sex trafficking, we believe, they're all serious offenses, but the sex trafficking conduct carries some significant penalties, and we are gratified that we were able to bring that charge.
One more coercive than the other?
I'm not going to be able to get into that, but you can look it up, and yes, sex trafficking, especially when it involves coercion or force, is a very serious crime, and it carries significant penalties.
Good afternoon, Darla Miles, ABC 7 New York. Thank you for this press conference and for the details. 2 questions. In context of this indictment and the information that was presented to the grand jury, are you able to clarify the number of victims? It's mentioned plural in the indictment, but can you specify the number of victims just for this particular indictment? And secondly, can you provide details about the alleged arson?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide either. The number of victims, you are correct. We are intentional in saying multiple. The details of the arson incident are limited to what we have in the indictment and also the detention letter that we filed, which contains more details than the indictment does at various points, but we don't have anything more beyond that. Next question.
Lynn Tran, CNN.
Are any of his accomplices or associates under investigation? And additionally, could he face any more charges?
So the investigation is ongoing. That means both as to him and to anyone else who we believe committed the crime with him. Next question.
Juliette Papa.
Hi, good morning from 1010 Wins. Any indication that some of the women or victims here were imprisoned in his residences, and did he have locations where he kept them, and they were not allowed to leave? And also, he's indicted here, although there were searches and raids in LA, Miami. Why in New York?
Well, I'm biased. I'm the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York. I think that we have an outstanding track record of bringing some of the most impactful, sprawling, complex, difficult sex trafficking, human trafficking, labor trafficking, you name it. The Southern District of New York can do it, and so we're very proud of that. And so the scope and complexity of this investigation isn't something that we ran from. It's something that we embrace, and we will continue to do that. As to your question about whether he imprisoned anyone, all I can say is that, I mentioned this March 2016 incident where something was caught on video, where a victim was attempting to flee, and there was violence that was associated with it. That was at a hotel.
Matthew Lee, Inner City Press.
Thanks a lot. Does your office intend to seek remand, or are you reaching a bail package? And if you're willing, how would you contrast this with the R. Kelly case in EDNY in terms of the elements? Thanks.
So we will be seeking detention. We have filed a letter laying out our reasoning for seeking pretrial detention. I'm not going to be able to expand beyond what's in the letter, but it contains all of the reasoning, and it contains the law as well. There is a presumption of detention in a case like this, and we think that's warranted.
John Anise, New York Daily News.
Thank you. I was hoping to get some more detail about the searches of his residence, the guns, the cases of lubricant, and the videos. Where were they found amongst his residence? Were they all scattered around the houses in one place? I kind of wanted to just get a better picture of how that stuff was found.
Well, look, I think that some of the details that you're seeking are in the detention letter. So, for instance, some of the AR-15s, 2 of the 3 defaced AR-15s were found in his bedroom closet in Miami, broken down into parts, along with magazines, with ammunition loaded in them. So some of that detail is in the detention letter. Beyond that, I'm not going to be able to get into where other items were stored.
Ben Kochman, Post.
Hey, thanks for doing this. Your office was the office that had been prosecuting Jeffrey Epstein before he died in custody. I have not read your detention memo yet. It's the first thing I'm going to do after this ends. But does the memo address, or is your office concerned with Combs's safety in custody, given what happened?
So we are concerned with anyone's safety whenever they are detained. Obligations to keep people safe as well as part of the criminal justice system. So, but I do not draw any sort of connection between Jeffrey Epstein's suicide and what may or may not happen to any other defendant while they are detained pre-trial. And of course, the decision whether to detain the defendant will be up to a judge. Our position is that pretrial detention is warranted under the law and based on the facts of this case. And I'll leave it at that.
Are some of the prosecutors on this case some of the same prosecutors that had been handling that, or that worked on the Maxwell case?
So I'm not going to get into the staffing. I will say that this team, this group of AUSAs, this incredible group has been working on this case around the clock, and they've had their hands full. Next question.
Gus Rosendale, NBC News.
Good morning, sir. Combs' attorney said that his client has been cooperative with investigators. He said that this morning. I was wondering if you would have a reaction to that.
Let me just say this. I think that generally with increasing frequency, the word cooperative or cooperating has taken on tremendous elasticity, and it no longer really bears any relation to what the word means when we use it in a very specific context. So responding to lawful process and the like does not qualify as cooperation when we use that term here.
Mike Sisak, AP.
Thanks. To that end, was there any discussion of Mr. Combs surrendering? I understand he was taken into custody at a hotel in Manhattan last night, and maybe that wasn't the plan. Can you elaborate on how that came about and why that was?
I'm not going to be able to get into any sort of operational details as to how he was taken into custody and when. He is in custody right now. He will be appearing in court later today.
Was there any discussion of him surrendering, given they claim he's cooperating?
I'm not going to be able to get into law enforcement tactics or operations. Well, I can't get into the charging decision. It is very meaningful to us that weapons were possessed, as we allege in the indictment. Part of the reason why this conduct was so pervasive and harmful was because victims and others didn't necessarily feel comfortable denying him his wishes, as we allege, because of the presence of firearms. I should leave it there.
Thanks. Last question, Jacob Shamison.
Jacob Shamsian, Business Insider. Thank you. Given that he's the sole defendant in this case and that you allege he's part of a conspiracy that involves members of his companies, do you anticipate a superseding indictment that bring allegations against other members of his companies or other co-conspirators as well?
Again, I can't take anything off the table. Anything is possible. Our investigation is very active and ongoing. And I think a lot of you who cover this office know that when we say such things, that developments are certainly foreseeable, but I cannot predict them sitting here today. All right, thank you, everyone.
Wow.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
That's it, you guys. Let's see if anyone else makes a closing statement. But do you see all these women? He's going to be prosecuted by a team of women. This is personal, you guys. Women, we are sick and tired of men abusing us around the world. The story about P. Diddy, the story about the Olympic runner who, when she went back home to Uganda, she was set on fire by her boyfriend and she died. The story here in France about the woman who was being drugged by her husband and, raped by people in her community. He had gone on the dark web. He had told people, hey, I'm doing this to my wife. She's going to be sleeping. She'll be out cold. Come to my house and do whatever you want to her. And so there were like 40, 50, or 60 people who were regularly coming to her house in the middle of the night and having their way with her. So and we're all aware of this, right, as women, right? And so this is the year of reckoning. Like, men cannot get away with this any longer. So when I heard the list of prosecutors and I saw that they were pretty much all women, oh my goodness, I could not have been any happier. This is personal. This is not just on behalf of Cassie and Dawn and the victims in this case. This is on behalf of women worldwide. The buck stops here. We're done. We're tired. Like, you will be made to pay. That is the message that I'm getting. And just seeing them just walk by so confidently, one after the other, right? Like, amazing. Yes, the spokesman was a man, but he has a team of women to put this together, and it is going to be juicy. It is going to be beautiful, and it is going to be just groundbreaking. So I wanted to tell you guys about some more things that I saw in the Law and Order case. And in addition to that, I want to take you through, you know how he mentioned a detention memo? I've got a copy of the detention memo that I will read with you right here, right now. So you know what I'll do? I will read the detention. Oh, it's quite long. Oh, it's quite long. Buckle up, you guys. It's going to have all the details. So I'll read the detention memo. And then if there's anything that is missing that I saw in the Law and Crime channel, I will chime in with that. But for now, we're going to focus on this detention memo. And I see all of you ladies in the chat saying the exact same thing, that we are all done. We're sick. We're tired. It's too much. It's too much. It has been able to go on for too long. I do have a question for you guys. What is with the children? I saw that there was a charge involving children. So some of these people were children being trafficked. Like, where did he get these children? This is the first time that I had heard of children being involved in this. So let's take a look at the detention memo, shall we? It's 16 pages long. Like, this is the full thing. Get ready. United States versus Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka Love. Dear Judge Tarnofsky, the defendant Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, Diddy, Love, was taken into custody this morning after a grand jury sitting in this district returned a 3-count indictment charging him with crimes related to his decade-long pattern of physical and actual violence against multiple victims and his use of force and coercion to enact his will, protect his reputation, and fulfill his actual desires. The government respectfully submits this letter in anticipation of the defendant's appearance before this court later today and in support of the government's request for the defendant's detention pending trial. As set forth below, there is no condition or combination of conditions that will reasonably assure the appearance of the defendant as required and the safety of others and the community, not to mention the integrity of the proceedings. As reflected by the gravity of the charges in the indictment, the defendant is dangerous and poses an ongoing threat to the safety of the community. If released, he remains a serious risk of flight despite the conditions offered by his counsel. Most glaringly, the defendant also poses a significant risk of obstructing justice. Indeed, and as set forth below, during the course of the charged conduct, the defendant has attempted to bribe security staff and threatened and interfered with witnesses to his criminal conduct. I do have one question for you guys, and my question is, so why didn't he leave? Right? He knew this was coming after the raids. Why didn't he get out of Dodge, pack up his kids, and move? We saw Russell Simmons. Russell Simmons is supposed to be having his moment too, but what did he do? He fled the country. He's been living in Bali, Indonesia, you know? So I do find that to be rather interesting. So yeah, he has already tried to obstruct the government's investigation of this case, repeatedly contacting victims and witnesses and feeding them false narratives of events as described in detail below. There are simply no conditions that would ensure that the defendant's efforts to obstruct and tamper with witnesses will stop. The defendant, therefore, cannot overcome the statutory presumption in favor of detention, and the court should order him detained. Background. On September 17th, 2024, that's today, an indictment returned by a federal grand jury sitting in the Southern District of New York was unsealed, charging the defendant with racketeering conspiracy from in or about 2008. So, you know, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. People were asking, so what took so long, right? Is there a different justice system for the rich versus the middle class versus the poor? And then I saw someone else come and say that this was because they had been building this case up against him for decades. And it appears to be the case. Through or about the date of the indictment in violation of 18 USC 1962 D count 1, ex-trafficking from in or about 2009 through in or about 2018 in violation of 18 USC sections 1591 and 2 count 2, and in interstate transportation to engage in prostitution from in or about 2009 through in or about 2024 in violation of 18 USC sections 2421A and 2 count 3. So these are the charges. He has been doing this for almost 2 decades. No wonder he thought he was untouchable. 20 years almost, you guys, that he has been doing this sort of thing. Insane. This again reminds me, I don't know if you saw my video earlier about him being arrested, but I said this is like Tom Girardi, when you've got so many people in your pocket that you've intimidated or you've paid off or you've bribed or whatever, that you just think that your house of cards will never come tumbling down until it does. So Combs' use of violence, threats, and coercion. Since at least 2008, the defendant and other members and associates of the racketeering enterprise alleged in the indictment, quote, the enterprise, which concludes the defendant's multifaceted business empires, the Combs business, wielded the power and prestige of the defendant's reputation as a musician, entrepreneur, and figure in the entertainment industry to commit federal crimes, including racketeering, ex-trafficking, and other offenses. As charged in the indictment, many of those crimes involve the actual abuse and exploitation of women and other crimes of violence. So I know someone had asked in the chat earlier if men were named. So far, I have not seen them. But we got to continue reading, because I do remember seeing that children were involved somewhere, and I haven't seen that yet here. So more to come. Okay. So let's talk about sex trafficking and abuse. Using the power and prestige of the enterprise, the defendant lured female victims into the defendant's orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. The defendant then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause those female victims to engage in sexual activity, which included frequent X acts with male commercial X workers, and the defendant referred to as freak-offs. Freak-offs were elaborate X performances that the defendant arranged, directed, and masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. Freak-offs occurred regularly from at least in or around 2009 through this year, sometimes lasted multiple days, and frequently involved multiple X workers. The defendant arranged freak-offs with the assistance of members and associates of the enterprise, including employees of his business, and the hotel rooms where they were staged often sustained significant damages. So people's bodies were sustaining damages, the hotel rooms were sustaining damages. Just, the brutality involved in this is just frightening to even imagine. The defendant ensured the victims would participate in freak-offs through coercion and violence. For instance, the defendant provided controlled substances, including ketamine, ecstasies, and GHB, to female victims so that they could and would continue to engage in freak-offs despite fatigue, mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion and pain. Oh, is anyone else's body in pain just imagining this? Like, why? Why would you do this? Why? You are a rich man, who's decent looking. I don't consider P. Diddy to be attractive, but he's not hideous, okay? He could have landed, multiple people to sleep with consensually, but he had to resort to this. Like, this is why I call him P. Demon. He is a demon, you guys. This is just, how do you even decide that this is what you want to do? This is what's going to get you off. This is sick, you guys. It really, really is. Wow. Now, let's see what else it is that they had to say, okay, you guys, because we're going to talk about the injuries next. So brace yourselves. It's not going to be easy. Additionally, both during freak-offs and separate from freak-offs, the defendant subjected female victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse, in part cause them to engage in freak-offs. The defendant hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged female victims, sometimes by their hair. So I think that was in reference to Cassie. Cassie might have been escaping a freak-off, okay? I think that at that point when she was running away from him, let me pull up that, I've got that screenshot from that video that still haunts us all to this day, but this was either in preparation for a freak-off that he was showering or after a freak-off, and she was trying to get away. So I think that that's what they're talking about when they said that he would hit, kick, throw objects at, and drag them by their hair, because you see him do every single one of those things in this video. This video is going to be like a star witness to this case, a key piece of evidence that will help put P. Diddy away, as it should, right? Let's see, where are we? The defendant, we got that. At least a dozen witnesses, you guys. So again, I'm thinking Cassie's going to be there. I'm thinking Kid Cuddy's going to be there, because you'll see it later on, but they talk about the car being blown up. I think that Lil Rod is going to be there. I think that Don Richard is going to be there. Maybe even Aubrey O'Day is a witness behind the scenes. Over a dozen, you guys. And you know who else I think is going to be a witness? The drug mule. Do you guys remember when they arrested P. Diddy's drug mule? And then he hasn't been really charged with anything super serious. I think that that's because they are using him, and they're going to negotiate to drop those charges so that he testifies against Diddy here. Okay, so we're going to now specifically talk about Cassie escaping. One incident of physical abuse occurred when a female victim was attempting to leave the hotel following a March 2016 freak-off. So there you go. It was following the freak-off. This abuse was captured on video surveillance and publicly reported in May 2024. The defendant's assaults often resulted in serious injuries to the victims that took days or weeks to heal. Cassie talked about this in her lawsuit. So they found out exactly how much Diddy paid to get that video covered up. $46,000, though I do believe that that was already reported when it came out. The defendant also coerced victims into participating in freak-offs by controlling their careers, finances, livelihood, and or housing, among other aspects of their lives, or by threatening to disseminate recordings of freak-offs. The defendant used his considerable wealth and influence to make victims rely on him financially. For example, by paying for their rent or their cars, or by offering them career opportunities. So it makes me wonder about that girl that he was with. Is her name Carisha or something like that? Like, is she also a victim here? Is she going to be testifying? I wonder. Once he provided his support, the defendant repeatedly threatened to take it away to ensure the victim's compliance with its demands, including their participation in freak-offs. Indeed, victims believed that they could not refuse the defendant's demands that they engage in freak-offs without risking their financial security or career prospects, or without repercussions in the form of physical or emotional abuse. There really was no way out. Other violence. In addition to the defendant's physical, sexual, and emotional abuse of his romantic partners, the defendant repeatedly engaged in acts of violence directed towards his employees and others. As charged in the indictment, the defendant, often assisted by members and associates of the enterprise, engaged in kidnapping, arson, and physical violence, such as throwing objects at people, throwing people to the ground, and hitting, dragging, choking, and shoving others. Numerous witnesses, including the defendant's employees and others, observed or experienced violence from the defendant firsthand and sustained lasting trauma as a result. For example, in the early morning hours of December 22nd, 2011, the defendant and a co-conspirator kidnapped an individual at gunpoint, facilitate breaking into and entering the residence of another. Kidnapping at gunpoint, you guys. That's what this man was up to. All the money, power, influence in the world, and this is what you decide to do in your spare time. Multiple witnesses would testify at trial to the events surrounding the kidnapping and break-in, the latter of which was corroborated by police reports and other records. Approximately 2 weeks later, the defendant's co-conspirators set fire to individual one's vehicle by slicing open the car's convertible top and dropping a Molotov cocktail inside the interior. That is in reference to P. Diddy. Do you guys remember how Cassie mentioned in her lawsuit that, sorry, not P. Diddy, that was in reference to Kid Cudi. Do you guys remember that? Cassie said that that's what happened. So now we know that Kid Cudi is going to be a witness. Guys, I sincerely hope that they live stream this thing, because how powerful is it going to be to watch this go down, to watch Diddy sit there, cower as a defendant, as Cassie, as Don Richard, as Aubrey O'Day, as Kid Cudi, and as whoever else, you know, that we might know, maybe even Carisha, I don't know. Other celebrities are all there to testify against him and the things that he has allegedly put them through. That, like, because when you think about, for example, the R. Kelly stuff, like, it was mainly just, you know, people who were not known to the public, but these are like people who are known. It's going to feel so impactful. Not that R. Kelly's victims are any less, this, that, or the other. It's just, this is going to be insane to witness. I do have to ask you, because I did not watch the Harvey Weinstein stuff go down, and I know that his victims were Hollywood actresses. Did we see any of them speak out, like Jennifer Lawrence or anything like that? Like, did any of them come and speak out, like, in court? Please let me know. So we got into the car thing. So I wonder if he held someone at gunpoint to get them into Kid Cudi's house, and then that's where they got something to get into the car. That's what I'm feeling like is being hinted here. Police and fire department reports extensively document the arson and conclude that the fire was intentionally set. Multiple witnesses would also testify to the defendant bragging about his role in destroying individual one's car. So if police knew that this was happening, if a police report was filed, why wasn't he arrested? I know they say that they were building a case and stuff, but why wasn't he arrested at this point? for at least this, then he serves, or maybe he gets some kind of a deal. Then afterwards, you use it towards other things. Like, why let him slide all this time? To me, like the whole we're building a case is not really, it doesn't fly with me when it comes to this one particular, part, to be honest. Okay. By the way, you guys, you might hear a dog barking in about 20 minutes or so because she's about to be picked up. Okay. More broadly, since at least 2008, allegations of the defendant's physical abuse of women and others have been publicly reported in the media, including in Hollywood blogs and on podcasts. Law enforcement reports corroborate that police responded to several instances of the defendant's violence, including assaults against victims and other individuals. More recently, there has been an outpouring of other public allegations against the defendant, including claims of threats and physical and actual violence dating as far back as the 1990s. So what happened in the 1990s, y'all? Tupac, Biggie. Are we going to potentially talk about Tupac and Biggie and what role Diddy did or did not play in those people's deaths? I'm getting the vibe that we are. And since we're going back to the 90s, are we also going to go back to just maybe a couple of years ago when his baby mama, Kim Porter, died? And now are we going to open up the lid? We might as well. If we're going to go to the 90s, let's not skip what happened just a few short years ago, right? However, at no point during the past few decades has the threat of public exposure or law enforcement intervention deterred the defendant from continuing his abuse. Section 3, firearms. And now we're going to get photos of these firearms too, you guys. The defendant and members of the enterprise, including the defendant's security personnel, at times carried firearms, and the defendant himself carried and brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others. Indeed, some victims were aware of the defendant's access to firearms. On one occasion, the defendant forced a female victim to carry a firearm. J-Lo! They're referring to Jennifer Lopez. Guys, this is huge. Jennifer Lopez. So like I said at the top of this video before the press conference, they did not name any names. They want to keep it all a surprise, you guys, because they do not want to give any kind of leverage to Diddy's team. But they are dropping strong hints. We saw instances of Cassie. We saw instances of Kid Cudi. Now J-Lo. My jaw is on the floor. J-Lo, I think she's already testified in private. And now when this actually goes to trial, she's going to be testifying again. Please, 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 dear God, let this be a televised, streamed a case. We need to watch this, you guys. We need to watch. And I'm also seeing, I've been seeing Jay-Z's name come up a lot too. Could this be the reckoning for Jay-Z too? I don't know, you guys, but my heart is beating. Ramster's asking, could that be why Ben Affleck is running for the hills? It very well could be, you guys. I really am so shook here. J-Lo, Usher, Bieber, Ellen, are these people going to speak up? Oh, hang on. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, sorry guys, she's like in hardcore defense mode, but she'll be fine. Okay, so we have all of these major names, you guys. This is going to be like groundbreaking. Do you remember when Jay-Z announced Tidal and he assembled everybody together in order to announce this like new streaming service? This is where it's going to be, but the legal version, okay? So let's continue. And I saw some mentions of Usher in there too. So Usher, we already know that as a child, he did live with Diddy at a time. And he said that although he didn't suffer anything, or he didn't admit that, he did say that he witnessed a lot of things that were just not normal for him to witness, you know, especially at his age at the time. And so I really feel like that could potentially be the next one that we hear about there. So don't discount anybody, to be honest with you. Okay, so let's continue on to see what else was mentioned here. Okay, so we already know that mentioning firearms and everything like that here, but they talk about how he brandished them towards different victims as well. Okay, so they say that the victims were aware of his access to weapons, you guys, and that really is a threat in and of itself, right? When you make people aware that you have something, you know, as dangerous as a firearm. On one occasion, the defendant forced a female victim to carry, so that's the one where we talked about JLo. That was JLo, you guys. The defendant continues to have access to guns, including illegal firearms. In March 2024, during searches of the defendant's residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s, each with defaced serial numbers. So, gun people, what does that mean, defaced serial numbers? Does that mean that these guns were stolen and they don't want to be traced back to anybody? Please let me know. Canadian living in Europe, we are not so gunsy us over here. As well as large capacity drum magazine. As pictured below in a close-up image, the serial number of one of the AR-15s is visibly bored through and obscured. So let me zoom in so you guys can see. All I can make out here is NSL and nothing else, okay? 2 of the 3 defaced AR-15s were found in defendant's Miami bedroom closet. Imagine sleeping next to that. And you know, and he's already shown it to you, like these women were living in extreme fear. Stored broken down in parts along with magazines that were loaded with ammunition. So it was loaded, as depicted below. One of the AR-15s had a 10-round magazine loaded with 10 rounds of large caliber .223 emission, while the second AR-15 had a 30-round magazine loaded with 19 rounds of .223 ammunition. So these are more pictures. These are some major. How is it possible that people, like regular everyday citizens or whatever, could just have these in their homes? Like, that's just a scary thought to me. Granted, these were illegal. Look how massive those are. Imagine one of these going through you. Jesus, demonic. This guy is just demonic. How do you turn out this way? A large capacity drum magazine loaded with 59 rounds of .223 ammunition was seized from the defendant's Los Angeles residence, as depicted below. Now, what is this? Oof. In addition, 6 legally purchased guns with serial numbers, some of which were stored in gun safes, were recovered from the defendant's residences. Although these particular guns, both the legal and illegal firearms, were seized, their presence in the defendant's homes demonstrates that the defendant has access to and surrounds himself with both guns and ammunition. Likewise, even if the defendant were personally restrained by the court from obtaining new firearms himself, he could retain access to them through others. In sum, the defendant's regular use of violence and threats of violence, as well as the coercion described above against victims and others, fostered a culture of fear in which these individuals believed they were unable to reject the defendant's demands without subjecting themselves to physical violence and other abuse. So let's talk about the firearms. They were registered to a current member of Combs' security staff. Okay, you guys, in addition to that individual, during the course of the charged conspiracy, Combs has employed other security staff members with significant criminal history, including violent crimes and firearms offenses. Now let's get into section B. Let me have a sip of water. Shout out to Sevilla, Spain for this cup. I know it's kind of cheesy, but I like to collect cups for my travels. So section B, this is 16 pages, right? And we're on page 6 right now. And we still got a lot to cover. Combs bribed witnesses and obstructed justice. Throughout the time period charged in the indictment, when the defendant faced the possibility that his violent and criminal conduct could become public, the defendants and other members and associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims not to report what they saw or heard to law enforcement or to otherwise conceal the criminal conduct. For example, and as noted above, in March 2016, the defendant was captured on video surveillance striking, kicking, and dragging a woman in a public area of a hotel in an apparent attempt to prevent her from leaving a freak off. When a member of hotel security staff intervened, the defendant attempted to offer the hotel security officer a stack of cash to ensure his silence. After the security guard refused the defendant's bribe, and after coordination between the defendant and his employees, the defendant's staff contacted other members of hotel security. At the same time, staff members were in close communication with the victim of assault as well, all in an effort to cover up the defendant's assault and to prevent the incident from being publicly disclosed. Within the days of the incident, the surveillance video disappeared from the hotel server. So this is what I don't understand. He tried to pay off that person. The person refused. So his team gets in contact with the hotel security, and somehow the video vanishes and $46,000 is transferred. So who in the security team agreed to the money? And why did the person who initially refused it, why didn't the person call the police, first of all? And when they knew what was happening? And second of all, why didn't they signal it to the higher ups, you know, whoever, like the owner or something like that, or like to the police even still after this thing was bought and paid for? Because I would think that they would be mandatory reporters, right, of violence, because hotels, airports, these massage parlors, these are hotbeds of human trafficking, of ex-trafficking. So they should have a certain, what is that word, responsibility to report things like this, right? Someone is trying to escape someone's room and they're being drag kicked, you know, beaten, objects thrown at them and dragged back into a room, and you're not going to call the police? That is crazy. That is crazy. These people need to go down. I want to know the name of this damn hotel. This hotel needs to be canceled. Yes, you know, and it is so true. What's done in the dark will always, always, always come to the light. You can get away with it for a little bit of time, but it will always come. You know, in this case, maybe almost 20 years, but it will always come out. Always. Look at Tom Girardi. He's on his way out of this adventure we call life, and his stuff has come to light. You know, it'll always come out. For example, and as noted above, in March 2016, yep, so we saw that when a member of hotel, okay. Similarly, throughout the time period charged in the indictment, members and associates of the enterprise have reached out to multiple victims on behalf of the defendant to convince them not to report the defendant's abuse. Most recently, in late 2023, immediately following public allegations of certain of the defendant's crimes, including his physical and sexual abuse of women, the defendant and other members of the enterprise made repeated phone calls to victims and witnesses, during which they provided victims and witnesses with false narratives of events in an apparent effort to conceal the defendant's crimes. On at least 2 occasions, the defendant recorded those calls. Oh my God, this fool, you fool. You knew that you were under surveillance and you recorded yourself witness tampering, intimidating witnesses, you fool. And, you know, speaking of him being a fool, the freak offs are evidence that, like, we only have, the feds only have because of him. The Cassie video, they only have because of him. It's already mentioned here that it disappeared from the hotel's server. They sold it to him for $46K. And how do you think the feds got it? This moron kept it with him at his house. Thank you for being a fool. Thank you for being a fool. Ooh. My God. Wow. C. Section C. The government's investigation is ongoing. While the indictment against the defendant was unsealed today, the investigation into his and other co-conspirators' conduct is active and ongoing. As a result of that ongoing investigation, as well as the defendant's charged conduct outlined above, including obstruction of justice and witness tampering, the government is limited in its ability to fully set forth all known details of the defendant's criminal conduct, including details of certain witness testimony. To the extent that the court has additional questions and the charged offense conduct or any other information set forth herein, the government is prepared to offer additional information on an ex parte basis. So there's more, you guys. This is not the end. Let's get into the argument. Are you guys still with me? How are you feeling about this so far? Let me check on the chat. What hotel was it? I need to find out too, Sun Beach, because that is a hotel. If it is a chain or whatever, even a local, that is a hotel I will never, ever, ever visit. Ever. Because that is just disgusting. What they did to Cassie. To sell that video for $46,000. You sold it to someone who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars for only $46,000. First of all, you're very stupid. Second of all, they should have called the police. They should have. And I really hope, unfortunately, I believe that the statute of limitations has run out to prosecute on that, his actions in that video and the hotel for failing to report. But nonetheless. Now let's continue on to the argument. So under the Bail Reform Act, federal courts are empowered to order a defendant's detention pending trial upon a determination that the defendant is either a danger to the community or a risk of flight. 18 U.S.C. Section 3142E, a finding of risk of flight must be reported. Okay, so this is all this stuff, right? Obstruction of justice. So these are things that we already know. Right now, they're just listing a bunch of things, right? So let's get into the parts where we find out Diddy specifically. So like they're trying to lay a case to not give him any bail. So let's get into discussion, section 2. And you know what I have to do actually while I'm here? Dmitry Shakhnovich from DSHAK Law is going to be joining me. He is a lawyer and he's based in New York. Okay, you guys, he's going to be joining me in about 30 minutes to discuss this situation. Okay, so let me just shoot him an email. Yes, but please join on this link instead. I'm already live from the press release, exclamation mark. Okay, so now we're going to be set. He's going to help us explain everything here because this is a lot to unpack. The attorney, is it the Attorney General of New York? He was very like tight-lipped about a lot of things. So we're going to have to turn to, you know, our lawyer friend, Dmitry, in order to get the nitty-gritty details here, okay? Now, section 2, discussion. For the reasons set forth below, the defendant poses a significant danger to the community, both in terms of physical violence and obstructive conduct, as well as a risk of flight. This is especially true given the nature of the criminal conduct and the strong weight of the evidence. The defendant, therefore, cannot overcome the statutory presumption in favor of detention in this case. Section 2A, dangerousness. The defendant is charged with serious and violent crimes. As charged in the indictment, the defendant has physically and actually abused women and others. So there you go. For those of you who are asking, is it just women? Is it just women? Are men being mentioned? You know, what else is being mentioned? Women and others. So I believe that we're going to start seeing male victims. This could be Lil Rod. This could be, some people are talking about Usher. Some people are talking about Justin Bieber. This could be anybody, you guys, right? But they're keeping things very tight-lipped in order to not give Diddy's team enough, you know, enough wiggle room anywhere. So where are they? For the better part of 2 decades, the ex-trafficking charge based on the defendant's abusive contact, count 2, carries with it a presumption of detention. And detention is particularly supported by the facts of this case. Since at least 2008, the defendant has engaged in serious acts of violence, including forcing and coercing women to participate in sexual activity, including acts with commercial workers, by using physical force, financial pressure, emotional abuse, and narcotics. These acts, described in detail above, were referred to as freak-offs, among other names, and involved orchestrated sexual performances facilitated through drug use that sometimes lasted days at a time. Can you guys imagine that? These people were ex-slaves. That's what they were. They were slaves. And that is just so scary. That is not all. As set forth in the indictment, the charges against the defendant capture significant additional violence, both spontaneous and premeditated. On numerous occasions, the defendant assaulted women, employees, and others when he became enraged by throwing objects at them, choking them, pushing them, kicking them, and slamming them against walls and onto the ground. The defendant and other members and associates of the enterprise were also capable of premeditated violence, resorting to kidnapping and arson when the defendant's power and control were threatened. Kidnapping and arson, that was in regards to the Kid Cudi stuff, right? The defendant's violence, whether spontaneous or premeditated, had the effect of exerting his continued control over these individuals. The defendant also carried firearms to intimidate and threaten others. Multiple defaced semi-automatic rifles were recovered when law enforcement searched the defendant's residences in March of 2024. including 2 defaced rifles that had been disassembled and hidden in the defendant's bedroom closet. In short, the conduct with which the defendant is charged shows a pattern of violent and abusive conduct, underscoring his dangerousness. This disposition to violence cannot be reasonably prevented through bail conditions. The violence alleged in this indictment was not isolated or aberrational. It was systematic and pervasive. The defendant abused women with whom he was in personal relationships, employees, witnesses to his crimes, and others. As described above, the defendant has actually, physically, and emotionally abused long-term romantic partners for decades, including by forcing them to engage in freak-offs. The defendant has abused countless others in his orbit, and in particular, women without regard for consequences. So just to read that line about women in particular, knowing that it's women who are prosecuting him and hopefully putting him behind bars for the rest of his life, chef's kiss. Indeed, the defendant's abuse of women long predates the conduct charged in the indictment. To date, at least 5 women have publicly accused the defendant of violent sexual assaults dating back to the 1990s. Moreover, the defendant's violence and abuse often occurred behind closed doors, including in his homes, hotels where he was staying, and other private settings. Did you guys ever watch that movie Blink Twice? It just came out recently. I saw it in theaters with my friend, and a lot of this is reminding me of that movie. You know, this case, the one that's going on in France right now with the man who was drugging his wife and, like, you know, having people over to do things to her while she was sleeping. All of this is reminding me of Blink Twice. If you haven't watched it yet, I do recommend it, you know, based on everything. If, you know, this type of stuff is something that you're really kind of like, you know, finding yourself just, you know, gripped by and just trying to understand, you know, the psyche of all of this and whatnot, like, give Blink Twice a watch. I do have to warn you, it is quite difficult to digest, but it's worth the watch, especially for us as women. Okay. What else did they say? He has assaulted victims, employees, and others, and even brandished a firearm at a victim in his homes. The alleged ex-trafficking similarly took place in private settings not easily monitored. Indeed, in addition to engaging in freak-offs at hotels, the defendant has, at times, organized freak-offs at his home or at the homes of his female victims. This is precisely the kind of violence that even strict conditions such as home incarceration cannot prevent. In sum, the defendant's long history of violent conduct makes clear that even the most stringent bail conditions will not suffice to ensure the safety of the community. The defendant is a serial abuser who repeatedly assaults and coerces women to achieve his own sexual gratification and uses his vast wealth and positions of power in the entertainment industry to conceal his illegal conduct and prevent victims of and witnesses to his abuse from coming forward. The defendant's long-standing pattern of abuse is probative evidence of the likelihood that he will continue to abuse. Indeed, nothing, not even the threat of public exposure or law enforcement intervention, has stopped his abuse. So what I think they're implying here is that even though, like, the information about Diddy just being, like, you know, psychotic, basically, he continued on with these freak-offs. He thought, oh, like, you know, they're just like, they're making threats, they're this or that, they're the other, like, but nothing really is going to come of this. I'm getting the idea that this has continued, you guys, you know, even since the Cassie lawsuit. He thought paying her off was enough, right? And then that these other people, because they don't really have, like, names like that or anything like that, he thought that that was going to be it. That was going to be the end of it. But alas, no. And I think that this is what they mean when they say that this is an ongoing investigation. They're not done. Diddy, you've got a lot more coming. If you think this is it, you were sorely mistaken. New defendants, I believe, will also be added to the case. But here's the thing. I got to ask you guys, should they include, and this is a question I will also ask to Dmitry Shakhnovich from DSHAC Law, but do you think that staff members, like, I'm talking about people who work in his house, like as cleaners or something like that, or as his security, or people who do this, who do that, should they also be charged, or were they also victims to Diddy, knowing what he is capable of? It's a very, very complicated question and situation, in my opinion. I think that when it comes to the security, right, people who already had long history of violence, this, that, and the other, and, like, already proven themselves to be shady characters, I think that, yeah, those people should be charged. But other people, I'm not so sure. Okay? I'm not so sure. So let me just see what some of you guys are saying in the chat. So sorry, you guys. I really want to catch up with your comments, okay? So Bab said, "Hi, I had to leave the thug trial to come here." The thug trial is another one that's so crazy, right? I've only been hearing about it here, there, and the other, but it's been wild to see how much that's been bungled. The press conference was a nothing burger. You know what? He was keeping very tight-lipped, but to me that means that they've got a strong case. So I found it to be rather encouraging, to be honest. And I'm happy that we know that this detention memo is out there so that we can go over the details on our own, because this has a lot more information than the stuff that we managed to glean from the press conference. That's for sure. So the defendant's longstanding pattern of abuse is probative and evidence and everything. Okay. So let's get into obstruction. As part of the charged racketeering conspiracy, the defendant engaged in obstruction of justice, including bribery and witness tampering. Given the defendant's history of engaging in obstructive conduct to conceal his criminal activity, both personally and through intermediaries, there is every reason to believe that the defendant will continue to engage in such obstruction if released. I do believe that as well. I honestly, I think they've laid a really, really good case for why Diddy should not be free. And I think that they met the conditions there to keep him locked up. As detailed in the indictment, following a freak-off in March 2016, the defendant attempted to bribe hotel security staff to prevent hotel security from publicly disclosing and or reporting to law enforcement his vicious attack on a woman attempting to leave a freak-off. The defendant's efforts to disclaim responsibility for that attack continued until earlier this year. A civil law, and I saw one of you guys speaking of that when he wanted to shirk responsibility for that. I saw one of you, I think it was you, Sum, or you, Ramster, or you, Green. Someone said, okay, well, are they going to show the video of him like apologizing for what he did to Cassie in court? Great question. That's something, please hang on to that. I'm also going to write it right here. That's something that's something that we can ask D-Shack, right? Because although he doesn't have a crystal ball or anything like that, as a lawyer, especially as a New York lawyer who has dealt with, cases of violence, this, that, and the other, he would be able to give us something based off of his experience, in working in these sorts of cases, right? So civil lawsuit was filed on or about November 16, 2023. It's crazy, you guys, that it's been almost a year. I feel like I have no concept of time anymore, because in my head, although it feels like this took forever to get the indictment, it still feels like just yesterday that Cassie filed the lawsuit, and now I'm saying November. Dude, we're October in just a couple of weeks. So it's almost been a year already? Jesus. Include alleging years of actual verbal and physical abuse by the defendant, including allegations describing the March 2016 indictment. Following the filing of the lawsuit, the defendant stated in no uncertain terms, quote, "Let me be absolutely clear. I did not do any of the awful things being alleged." So that might answer the question, right, about whether or not that video is going to be shown. We're going to see the statement first, I'm sure, of Diddy denying everything. So they're going to show the jury, listen, this man's a liar. He's going to deny it, but he denied that he ever did anything to Cassie. And take a look at this video of him doing things to Cassie, and take a look at him, accepting responsibility. You don't know what the truth is with someone like this. So I'm happy that he was stupid enough to put all of this online. Through counsel, the defendant vehemently denied the offensive and outrageous allegations, describing the complaint as riddled with baseless and outrageous lies. It was not until the video surveillance footage of the defense's attack was leaked to the media months later that the defendant was forced to admit that he had, in fact, perpetrated the disgusting attack. I love how they go, the disgusting attack. Like, that was a total legal burn. Clearly, the defendant is willing to deflect, minimize, and lie, and induce others to do so on his behalf to avoid taking responsibility for his own actions. Yup, he's pinned. More recently, the defendant has, directly and through intermediaries, engaged in obstructive conduct related to the matters under investigation in this case. Specifically, following the November 2023 lawsuit, the defendant and intermediaries acting on his behalf reached out to potential victims and witnesses to the alleged conduct, including individuals he did not speak to regularly and had not spoken to in years. So he knew this was coming. He went, he panicked, he reached out to everybody, and he said, don't say a single word about me, right? Wow. To attempt to feed those victims and witnesses false narratives about the defendant's criminal conduct. With respect to at least two of these individuals, the defendant's co-conspirators assisted in efforts to protect the defendant. Wow. So some of these people caved, and they really did try and help him cover up his misdeeds. So these people went from being considered victims like anybody else here to co-conspirators. Now, come on. Come on. Wow, that's crazy, you guys. For example, on or about November 19, 2023, just 3 days after the filing of the lawsuit described above, the defendant made multiple calls to another victim of his sexual abuse and recorded certain of those calls using the cell phone of a co-conspirator. So they're not naming who the co-conspirator is, but we know that there's going to tell you guys something, and this just hit me just here right now, especially considering the fact that his son, the one with the name that keeps on changing, what is it, Christian? Is it King today? Which one is it? I think he's the co-conspirator. I think it's him. I wouldn't be surprised. Diddy seems to be the closest to him, and I see him using his son's phone to do this. I don't know why, but I have a feeling that that's his son. We're going to have to wait and see, right, as all of this progresses, but I have a feeling that it's his son. Do any of you guys get that vibe as well? Because who else would it be? Could it be his security team? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know, but I think it's his son. During the calls, the defendant repeatedly asked for the victim's support and friendship. And oh my God, girl, he put you in a freak off, and now here he comes talk about don't talk to the feds. I need your support and friendship. I'm a victim here. Oh my God. The manipulation, the connivery, and attempted to convince the victim that she had willingly engaged in acts constituting SA. The defendant also assured the victim. So it seems like she went to the authorities and said, this is what happened. So he tried to gaslight her out of testifying, but she went to the authorities and she testified. And now he's in extra trouble. And this is a big reason why he's not getting bail, because it turns out that he did this. He was witness tampering. The defendant also assured the victim that if she needed the defendant to, she ain't got to worry about nothing else, AKA money. But why would she accept money from you, Diddy? If you recall, as we read earlier in this, you always held money over people. You promised people money. You promised to take care of them, but then you would SA them. You would trap them in these freak-offs. So why would she go back, trust you, accept your money, knowing the strings attached to your damn money? A thinly veiled attempt to coerce the victim into adopting and supporting the defendant's false version of events to protect the defendant. Even more concerning, since learning about the criminal investigation, including following the execution of the search warrants at his residences, Combs contacted other witnesses on multiple occasions, including other witnesses who had received grand jury subpoenas. So you got them when they already got these subpoenas. Oh, you were done for. He's done. He's done. He's done. I'm hoping this is decades. I'm hoping this is the rest of his life in prison. The defendant's recent conduct is similar to that in the United States versus Lafontaine, in which the Second Circuit affirmed the district court's revocation of pretrial release after the defendant in that case engaged in witness tampering. Specifically, the defendant, who was charged with multiple counts of fraud in connection with providing false claims to medical insurers, called a witness to remind the witness that a particular patient had received surgeries that the patient had not in fact received. So they're using case law here, right, to defend their decision or their attempts to withhold bail from P. Diddy. So they're saying that now, bringing it back to Diddy to tie things together, his conduct goes beyond what the Lafontaine court found sufficient to revoke bail. So if the court revoked bail in this situation, now they extra have to revoke it because this is even worse. Even before being charged with a crime, the defendant has taken numerous proactive steps to tamper with potential witnesses' testimony against him. He is so stupid. He should have just fled the country. You don't sit there trying to witness tamper when you can just leave before you get charged with anything, you big dummy. The government is aware, through electronic evidence, toll records, conversations with witnesses, and other evidence, the defendant has contacted witnesses, including subpoenaed witnesses, prior to the dates on which the witnesses were required to appear before the grand jury. This is a federal case. The Department of Homeland Security, the FBI are involved, and you pea-brained You thought that you could beat this? Whoo! He is so dumb. How did he build such an empire with such a little brain? Wow. In addition, the defendant has recorded, and then he recorded evidence of him witness tampering. I'm sorry. I have to laugh for a second because how stupid can you be to record that? And provided either directly or through intermediaries false narratives of the events that transpired so that those witnesses would adopt that false testimony. Moreover, the defendant's obstructive conduct is made even more alarming by the manner in which he carried it out to evade detection. In some instances, by having intermediaries make calls, which he carried it out to, what happened here? You know when you're replaced because you're like one line over, make calls on his behalf, and recording certain calls on another individual's device. So he's like, for example, if we're using his son and his security guy, right? So son, you make this call, security, you record, well, let's reverse this. Security, you make this call, son, you record the call. That way my hands are clean. You don't think the feds have seen it all? Come on now, come on. These deliberate actions show that the defendant was aware that what he was doing was obstructive and that his aim was to evade detection. Absolutely. Even the most stringent conditions, including the monitoring of a court-authorized electronic device, would fail to ensure that the defendant would not engage in this kind of obstruction from his home, including by acting through intermediaries and using others' devices. Given the defendant's history of obstruction, as well as the violent nature of the charges against the defendant cannot overcome the presumption that no condition or combination of conditions can assure the safety of the community. Now we're getting into his flight risk. Guys, we're breezing through this. It's a 16-page document. We're already on page 11, and I think we're almost done page 11, actually. So let's pat ourselves on the back. You know how they say that people these days don't have like an attention span? I'm sorry, but when something is like this, you've got to pay attention. This is serious stuff, man. And I think Hollywood has changed forever now. It started with the Me Too movement, right? And then Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, but this P. Diddy one, because the magnitude of the people involved here is just major. So just to recap, for those of you who might just be joining us now, we're talking Cassie, we're talking J-Lo. She was mentioned, she was alluded to. So the no actual names were mentioned here, right? But she was alluded to here. We're talking Kid Cudi. Then there's the Danny Kane members, right? So Aubrey O'Day has not filed a civil lawsuit, but she very well could be a witness here. She's been against him for a very long time. You know, she even made a tweet when he got arrested and everything like that. Dawn Richards, she filed a lawsuit against him. And there's plenty other people. So we already know that Usher stayed at Diddy's home when he was a child, and Usher implied that he witnessed freak-offs. The fact that a child could have witnessed this, I think that that might be why, you know, maybe children weren't brought in as like, you know, ex-slaves or anything like that. Maybe Usher is the child link, right? People were mentioning Justin Bieber too. Maybe Justin Bieber, because he was a child, right? Remember there's a video of Diddy like, why don't you come around my house anymore? Why don't you come to my parties? That type of stuff. That might be involved here. So this could change Hollywood once and for all. No more casting couches. No more leveraging careers over people's heads in exchange for actual favors. No more. It's over. It's done. And I really, truly feel like this team being pretty much exclusively female prosecutors, they are taking this personally and they are ready to, they are really ready to bring this to justice. Okay? Like, this is serious. This is personal. Now let's continue on. So nor can the defendant overcome the presumption that he's a flight risk. The crimes that the defendant is charged with carry significant penalties, including mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years. Mandatory minimum of 15 years. Oh, love that. And a statutory maximum sentence of life imprisonment. The possibility of a substantial sentence is a significant factor in assessing the risk of flight. So there you go, major flight risk, right? Here, the defendant is facing at least 15 years of imprisonment if he is convicted. This fact alone will provide a compelling incentive for anyone to flee from prosecution. But the incentive to flee is especially strong for this defendant, who, at age 54, faces the very real prospect of spending a substantial portion of the rest of his life in prison. As detailed below, the evidence in this case is incredibly powerful, as the facts set forth in the indictment and herein make plain. Dozens of victims and witnesses have provided detailed, credible, and corroborated information against the defendant. So do you notice they didn't say a dozen? They said dozens. So guys, we can even be talking about 24 people stepping forward. This is huge. Have any of the other cases been this big? Okay, let's see what else. These individuals include many who personally experienced and witnessed violence and other crimes at the hand of the defendant. I also think that Cassie's makeup artist friend might be speaking up too, because she did mention that she had seen something. I'm remembering a karaoke, something about like they were at a karaoke and Diddy came barging in, or he like snatched Cassie up or something like that. So Gwen's asking, do you think Cat Williams might be a witness too? He tried to tell us years ago. I know that Cat Williams might have been hinting at Diddy when he said that 2024 was going to be the year of people being exposed, the year of reckoning. I'd have to go back and see what he had to say specifically about this. I'm not really familiar, but very well could be, right, if he knows something. And Cat Williams is someone who doesn't shy away from the truth, right? Like he is totally fine sharing what it is that he knows, from what I'm aware of anyway. You know, I saw the Club Shay Shay interview and everything like that. 1,000 bottles of lube. Yeah, isn't that scary? And these things would last for days at a time even. And these people would be so sore. And sometimes he would even beat them so badly that they would take weeks to even recover from that. Or they'd have to be pumped with IV fluid after oof. Ugh. I hate to think about what was even going on in those rooms. Honestly, my heart is just so shattered. I can't imagine the trauma that these people went through, both mentally, emotionally, physically even. Moreover, their accounts are well corroborated by significant extrinsic evidence, including financial and billing records, travel records, electronic data, and communications, including extensive communications by and with the defendant himself. For example, victim testimony regarding freak-offs is at times corroborated by other witness testimony. Communications with the defendant and commercial ex-workers. Also, they talk to the ex-workers. They talk to them. Woo! Here we go. Travel records, hotel records, videos, plural, of the freak-offs, and records reflecting or indicating payment. Wow. Similarly, a victim's physical ABUSC may be corroborated by, among other things, videos of the abuse, photographs of injuries, reports made to law enforcement, communications with the defendant and others, and testimony from other witnesses who saw or heard about the abuse. The vast and varied sources of evidence described in detail below will be compelling evidence of guilt at any trial in this case. Thus, the serious risk of conviction provides further incentive for the defendant to flee prosecution. So this man not only was providing video evidence of these freak-offs, but he was also gathering evidence of injuries from these freak-offs and payment from these. You weren't even paying them in cash? He's so stupid. Wow. He's so dumb. The videos are why this is bigger than the Epstein case. I think so too. Now I have a question, and I'm cringing at the thought of this. Will those videos be disseminated, or photos? Like, I know they can't show full graphic, like full, like they'll be censored or something. Is that going to be something that's revealed in some capacity? I'm kind of scared for the victims, right? To have that stuff out there, because I do believe, and I will be asking Dishak Law when he joins us, but I do believe that this is going to be streamed and televised. And so that type of stuff being out there might be really, really rough for them. I'm scared, especially the injuries and stuff like that. Or perhaps Cassie Cassie and other victims were taking photos of the injuries of themselves, like the bruised and battered face, the everything like that. What I really want it sounds weird, but the one that really struck me the most from when she was talking about this. Honestly, you guys, it's so hard to talk about this without like crying. Like I just feel myself tearing up because it's just so sad what these people went through, Cassie especially. But the one thing that just still stuns me to the day is the surgery thing. And thank you for being here, Tess. This is such an important story. And so I'm really happy to be able to share it with you guys, you know, because like victims of people like Diddy should not live in shame in the shadow or, you know, anything like that. Like they should be proud of themselves for being brave enough to come forward and put a stop to it. And then it's people like Diddy who should be shamed. You know, these are the people we need to shine the spotlight on to show people, you know, how terrible they are, you know. So when it comes to evidence that I really am so curious to see play out here is like the surgery stuff. So do you remember Cassie said that he forced her to get a boob job to get bigger boobs? So that she gets it against her own wishes. She's wheeled out of surgery. And if you guys have had surgery, you know how weak and drained you are, right? And he takes one look at them. He goes, actually, that's too big. Wheel her around and do a different size. Can you imagine that? That's what he did to her. She's still hooked on all these things, you know, the fluids, the antibiotics, the painkillers, all of that is still hooked. And the anesthesia is still in your body. And this demon from the flaming, fiery pits of hell says, turn around while all of this is still going on. And she's still so fragile, and do it again. Take those out and do it again. Just cut her wide open and do it again. Like that to me was just the most thing that I had, one of the most shocking, disturbing things I've ever heard. It really, really was, you guys. Wow. Joy, this is a good point that you bring up here, that the doctors need to be exposed, because guess what? The surgeon who did that surgery, he died under mysterious circumstances now. It's interesting how everyone around Diddy dies, right? Very, very interesting. So maybe that's even something that's going to be mentioned, right? Because they're going far back. They're going to the 90s. They talked about J-Lo having to carry his gun for him in her purse. That's how far back they're going. So maybe this will be brought up. Maybe this will be brought up, you guys. The vast and varied sources of evidence described in detail below will be compelling evidence of guilt at any trial in the case. Thus, the serious risk of conviction provides further incentives for him to flee prosecution. Moreover, this case risk of flight is augmented by the nature of evidence against the defendant. So did we already have this? Yeah, video recordings and everything like that. And so they talk about how these things have the potential to significantly and negatively impact the defendant's reputation. For example, dozens of video recordings created by the defendant to freak off with victims. For decades, the defendant has spent significant time and resources ensuring that his criminal conduct avoids public scrutiny. Given the potential penalties here, both incarceration and reputational harm, the defendant has every incentive to flee to avoid prosecution and a public trial. Oh, I really hope he gets that public trial. The defendant's incentive to flee outlined above, coupled with the defendant's seemingly limitless resources, create significant risk of non-appearance. So his net worth is publicly estimated to be close to $1 billion. I do have to ask a question, you guys. What is it that, like, what's in the water that ever since Kylie, like, I feel like when Kylie got declared a billionaire or something like that, like now every celebrity suddenly is a billionaire. Like, what is that? I just, you know, is it inflation? Like, why is everyone a billionaire all of a sudden? Anyway, indeed, the investigation of this case has revealed that the defendant has access to vast funds and resources, including deep reserves of cash, which would facilitate his evasion of prosecution. At least as of December 2023, the defendant had access to dozens of bank accounts, some personal and many under corporate entities, which contain millions of dollars. Additionally, as of December 2023, the defendant had over $1 million in personal cash on hand. The defendant has traveled internationally several times per year since at least 2006, and since approximately 2019 has owned a personal plane, one on which he has traveled internationally. So yep, having a private jet makes him a major flight risk, you guys. The defendant maintains two primary residences in Los Angeles and Miami. In addition to his private plane, the defendant owns multiple vehicles in multiple locations. He has personal staff, including assistants, security, chefs, trainers, and others. So I just want to point out here that trainers, one of his trainers is actually the guy that Cassie wound up marrying. That's Cassie's husband. He helped Cassie get out of this. Speaking of Cassie's husband. He could be a witness. He worked as Diddy's trainer. He witnessed this stuff, and he told Cassie to get out. She got out. They got married, and they've got kids together now. Oh, you know, it's so crazy reading this entire document with you guys, because the more I read, the more I learn, the more that things just jump out at me. Are you guys catching that too? Like, are certain things just jumping out and hitting you like, oh my God, that's this, that's that. Like, this is such, to me, this is going to be such a slam dunk case for the prosecutors and others who perform his tasks at his command, including transporting him, delivering him currency, securing narcotics for him, the drug mule who was arrested, another person who is going to be testifying against Diddy, and other tasks. He is extraordinarily well connected both within and outside the entertainment industry. In short, if the defendant wanted to flee, he has the money, manpower, and tools to do so quickly and without detection. The defendant's lack of access to his passport or private jet would not negate the fact that the defendant could easily buy his way out of facing justice. Do any of you guys watch that Netflix show? There's that Netflix show, and it stars Omar Sy. It's called Lupin, and it's based here in Paris, and it's just like this guy who, like, he can change his identity, this and that, and just disappear. You know, he's wanted by like the detectives and the cops and stuff, but he disappears. For some reason, when they're talking about, oh, him not having a passport or a private jet, that stuff being seized, like, it wouldn't stop him. He still has access to millions of dollars in cash, right? That's the case here. What would he do? You know, he's got doctor. He can go get some plastic surgery, do something, completely transform himself, and just like disappear if he wanted to. He really could. The fact that they're going super far, this means that they are not allowing for any wiggle room. So far, based on what I'm reading, the minimum amount of time, that Diddy can face right now is 15 years. On a certain count though, but we're not done reading everything, but it looks like it's 15 years minimum, you guys. And I really do hope as well that they investigate Kim's death. He should have, and you know what, speaking of Kim's death, they might even look into Tupac and Biggie in all of this. I am telling you guys, they want to get him for every single thing he's ever been accused of. He should have fled a long time ago. I agree. Listen, if I were in his case and I knew a raid was coming, or if a raid even just happened, I would be out the first thing smoking the next day. He should have gotten out, but I'm happy that he didn't, because he needs to be held accountable for his actions. Yes, Jay, that is how Cassie got out. Yeah, Diddy's former trainer, her now husband, Alex Fine. And yeah, Tess, isn't it amazing to just see it all come together? Like, this has been just, wow, incredible to read. And this goes to show you that this, like, you know, the rumors about Diddy had been around forever. People always are so like, dismissive of celebrity gossip, this, that, and the other. But like, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And I've been hearing these things forever and ever and ever. Okay, this goes to show you that like these things don't just come out of thin air. As discussed below, the defendant's legal team has attempted to mitigate this substantial risk of flight by taking steps such as taking his family's passport, attempting to sell his plane, and reporting his whereabouts to the government. These steps have been taken with the precise goal of crafting an argument for bail before the court. While the defendant may have made the calculated decision in consultation with his attorneys not to flee before any charges were filed, that calculus inevitably changes today, when an indictment charging the defendant with extremely serious offenses carrying enormous potential penalties was unsealed. He is now, for the first time in his life, facing a mandatory term of imprisonment of 15 years and a maximum term of imprisonment of life, in which the government is prepared to prove the charges against him by, among other things, the testimony of dozens of witnesses and victims to his serial abuse, and evidence from dozens of his own electronic devices and those of his co-conspirators. Who are his co-conspirators? I am dying to know. And the fact that it's his own evidence that's putting him away is just, I have to laugh again. It's your own evidence, you D. Wow. Insane. Given the serious nature of the charges, the strength of the evidence, and the defendant's access to vast amounts of resources, his risk of flight is more pronounced than it has ever been. So we're going to get into Section D next. Don't forget, you guys, Dmitry Shakhnovich, our lawyer friend here on YouTube from D-Shak Law, who is a New York practicing lawyer, is about to dial in any minute now to help us get a legal perspective of what is going on here. So I will be posting a link to his channel. It is D-Shak Law. Please, please, please show him some love. Subscribe to his channel. He is always, always here for us at the Grace Report to lend his legal expertise. And I truly, truly appreciate it. Maria says he's such a narcissist that he believes he'll get away with it. Most likely why he didn't flay. Yup. And also most likely why he kept these recordings. He was using these recordings to intimidate people and force them to behave, to show them that he can do these things and get away with it. And now look, it's all coming back to bite him. Toby's a woman. Him not fleeing is proof of how out of control his ego is. Yup, you and Marie are on the same wavelength. He really thought he was untouchable. His co-conspirators could be his sons. Oh, look who's here. It's Dmitry Shakhnovich, everybody. Dmitry, we were just talking about you. How are you, Dmitry?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. We streamed it live here on the channel, the press conference about the indictment that was handed down to Diddy. Were you able to watch that as well?
I was not. I was tied up today, but I'm familiar with it. I've been reading about it, and quite frankly, it's not something that's unexpected, right?
Yeah, it's just been stunning to see that this has officially happened. So Cassie, she blew the lid open on all of this with her lawsuit in November of 2023. And here we are almost a year later with the indictment finally being announced. So with my channel, my subscribers here, we were just reading the detention memo. It is 16 pages and it is just absolutely wild. So before we get into the questions, I just want to remind everyone that this is Dmitry Shakhnovich of D-Shak Law. He's got a YouTube channel where he analyzes a lot of the most pressing legal cases that we are facing today. And you guys should totally subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying this sort of commentary, if you have an interest in, legal world colliding with the celebrity world. So Dmitry, I did want to ask you how you felt about some of the stuff coming out. So for example, they said that they were looking into things as far back as the 1990s for Diddy. Is that surprising to hear?
No, look, the federal government and particularly the Southern District of New York is really without question the top prosecutor's office in the country. I mean, there's really no even close second. It's what all the TV shows are based on. It's where all the big trials are held. It's where all the big time foreign terrorism cases and other things are tried. So it doesn't surprise me that going far back. Federal cases generally have a very high conviction rate. They do a real good job of gathering evidence, of investigating cases, of corroborating witness statements, of preparing cases for trial. And so this doesn't look good, but it's also, again, not surprising. Right after that search warrant was executed, I may have told you, I told others, that something like this will likely be happening.
And so they mention a lot in the detention memo. They talk about co-conspirators, but so far only Diddy has been charged. What is the strategy behind that?
It's very tough to say this early on, right? These are folks who may be testifying. These are folks who may be cooperating. These are folks who may have given statements to the government. And for whatever reason, there are certain criminal justice interests at play that prevent the government from wanting to disclose this information. Of course, Diddy does have a constitutional right to confront those witnesses, right? He will have a right to do that at some point down the line, assuming that we get that far in this case and there's no plea taken. So at some point, we'll find out who these folks are, but not yet.
So speaking of Diddy not having the right to confront these witnesses, it's being revealed that he has tried to tamper with witnesses and to intimidate witnesses and to gaslight witnesses. So far, they have used that as evidence for why he should not be granted bail. But do you think that that can factor in later on in other aspects of, potential new charges being handed down to him?
Look, it can. And in so many cases, I have clients come to me and say, what if I go talk to the victim? What if I go talk to X, Y, and Z? What if I approach his or her friend or boyfriend or husband or father or mother? And I always tell them, don't. Stay away from every witness victim. Stay away from the relatives. Stay away from everything. because the last thing you need, and this case is far more serious than many of those cases, but the last thing you need is additional charges. And again, the feds are thorough. They will find this out. They will gather these pieces of information. They will gather these emails, these text messages. They will connect dots. If you try to do it through third parties, they'll figure that out too. Don't contact victims of crimes after you've been charged or while you're being investigated for a crime. That's a big no-no in my world.
And so you would think that everybody knew that, but for some reason, Diddy allegedly did that. And not did he do that, but he recorded himself contacting them. So basically, it was laid out in the detention memo. He had one co-conspirator use their cell phone so that he can call from somebody else's phone. And then he had somebody else recording him contacting a witness or a victim. And in the recordings, he is saying, hey, like, you will never have to worry about anything. Like, you're misremembering. Just know I need your friendship. I need your support. And you'll never have to worry about anything. What could that lead up to for him?
It can lead up to exactly what you're talking about, which is additional charges. And certainly, these are statements against interest. These are statements that will be admitted at a trial, right? They're non-hearsay statements, so they're admissible. They have evidentiary value. And so it's not going to look good in front of a jury when those statements come out. And recordings still, although AI may change that as time passes, and that's something lawyers are struggling with in the coming, or will be struggling with in the coming years, recordings, video, and even audio are still really good pieces of evidence. So clearly, Diddy is a smart, capable man because of what he's accomplished in his life. But sometimes when you're faced with these kinds of circumstances, people do all kinds of things. And it's tough to explain sometimes, because you would think that either him independently or with the help of his lawyers and other folks, he would be told to not do these kinds of things. But
exactly,
it's tough to get into someone's head in those circumstances.
He seemed to have a pattern of recording things. In fact, they talk about how they have dozens of videos from these freak-offs that he was allegedly conducting, and they're his own videos. Apparently, he's got photos of the victim's injuries and things like that as well. So what is it with people like this and keeping track of things that, you know, get them in a lot of trouble down the line? Is it like a manipulation tactic to, you know, fear people, cause people fear of speaking out? Like, what could it be?
It could be a variety of things. Maybe he was preparing for something down the line and wanted to keep evidence in place so that if somebody alleges he did something else, he always had materials that supported what he could have thought was his position in the past. Or maybe it's just something inside of him that clearly is not all there. And then so he's troubled, and troubled victimizers tend to do these kinds of things.
So now I feel like this is a really, really groundbreaking case in regards to the amount of stars that are implied here. So we've got Cassie Ventura, Don Richard from Danny D. Kane, which is a major band that Diddy had founded on the reality show Making the Band. They've come forward, and in the detention memo and in the indictment, they hinted at Kid Cudi and they hinted at J-Lo as well. So could these people be called to testify? Could this be a public trial? What can we expect in regards to all of this unfolding?
It's absolutely going to be a public trial if it's a trial. It'll likely be probably the biggest trial in New York, maybe since his first trial in '99, where he was acquitted of the gun charges. Every so often, New York will have a case like this, right? They will have a Weinstein, or they will have a Ghislaine Maxwell. They'll have a case that will grab the attention of the world. And this will be that in the next year or so, whenever this goes to trial. And all these reasons are good reasons for that, right? A star-studded lineup of potential witnesses, and who knows what'll come out in the future. The case is just starting. The indictment was just unsealed. So everything is still to come. Discovery is still to come. Information exchange and document exchange is still to come. Video exchange is still to come. Generally, federal trials aren't recorded. Judges don't permit cameras in the courtroom in federal cases. But that doesn't mean they won't be watched closely, obviously, particularly these days.
Could there be an exception for this given the amount of public interest and like, you know, the star power here in regards to Diddy and the other people mentioned?
There could be, but I would bet my house and everything I have that there won't be. The Southern District of New York tries high-profile cases of the biggest kind, right? Global terrorism cases and cases having to do with 9/11 and things that are beyond even very serious cases like this that have implications for the government as a whole and the country and the world. And so I don't think an exception will be made here. If he was in state court, I think it'd be different.
Okay. So just as a reminder, you guys, I am joined by Dmitry Shakhnovich of D-Shak Law. He's got his own YouTube channel where he talks about legal news that is hitting the world by storm right now. So definitely make sure to check out D-Shak Law on YouTube as well for more legal information. So we talk about how there's a lot of the evidence and stuff that Diddy had been gathering from the freak-offs and whatnot. Do you think that the videos and the photos, you know, even censored, will make their way into the courtroom? Like people will see it? Like how does such sensitive, you know, especially nudity type stuff, how does that get handled in this sort of court of law?
Well, there are several ways to do it. Number one, again, in this case, no cameras in the courtroom, right? So this video won't be broadcast to the world. It'll just be broadcast to the folks who are in that courtroom. This is a case when jury selection will begin. Jurors will be advised that there's sensitive, very difficult information that may come out in this case. There's information that may make your stomach turn, and you have to be ready for that if you want to serve on this jury. So that's how the jurors will be protected. As it relates to the general public, members of the media, aren't obligated to attend, right? So they don't have to be there if they're uncomfortable. But it's possible that in a case like this where such really sensitive information and videos may be shown, a judge may give a warning even to the members of the public and members of the media that you may not want to be around if you're uncomfortable with that kind of stuff.
And so this question actually that Tess is asking here, it kind of was asked during the press conference, but the prosecutor, he kind of, you know, he was very tight-lipped. He didn't provide many details about anything, right? So I'm wondering if you know what could be done in order to prevent people like Diddy from, you know, potentially ending their own lives to avoid being like prosecuted or condemned for these charges.
That's tough to say because it depends on so many things here, right? I don't know whether he'll be detained like Epstein. I don't know if he detained on the same circumstances as Epstein. It does seem likely that he won't be let out pending a trial, but you never know. And, you know, Epstein is one of those topics in American culture that people fight about and nobody really knows the answers and nobody knows things. And so it's tough for me to analogize to a situation that is, you know, who knows? It seems to be that it was self-harm, but it could have been, who knows? I don't know. However, certainly there are protective measures that are put in place, and they likely will be, depending on where he's held pending trial. Again, because we're in the Southern District of New York, this is a courthouse that will assign inmates pending trial to a particular courthouse that is accustomed to dealing with these kind of folks, right? Whether you're Epstein or whether you're El Chapo or whether you're Victor Boot or whether you're a variety of other people who have been tried in that courthouse over the years. There are measures in place for high-profile inmates, and he is the highest profile inmate you could possibly have. So here we are.
Wow. Do you know about the living conditions in the prison that he's in or anything like that? Like, is it like a typical prison or?
Yeah, prison conditions aren't good, no matter where you are. There are certain rights that are stripped away when you're in prison. Obviously, you're not entitled to the same rights as you would be on the outside. But constitutional protections kick in, right? There can be inhumane treatment. There can be constitutional violations. There can be civil rights violations. So that's kind of the best answer one can give you. What happens day to day really depends on where he is and under what circumstances and for how long and so on and so forth.
Do you see him potentially being relegated to solitary confinement just because of the nature of who he is?
Well, solitary confinement typically involves misconduct. So you're only put in solitary if generally if you've done something wrong and as a result, you have to be confined, punished really in a certain way. Otherwise, certainly protective measures will be put in place to isolate him from Joe Schmo, right? That's just, that makes sense. And that's what will happen here. And I'm assuming the DOC on the federal level, right, the Bureau of Prisons that's in charge of this will be coordinating efforts to make sure that nothing happens, especially in light of this Epstein thing that happened a few years back. And now everybody's kind of on their toes.
Mm-hmm. Now, Jessica was asking about the J-Lo. So I know that you didn't watch the press conference. I know you're working, which, by the way, thank you so much for joining us in the middle of your workday. But just for you, Jessica, in the detention memo that I was reading, they talked about how Diddy always had firearms on him and how he would threaten his victims with them and how he would even force them to hold them for him. So J-Lo had been arrested back in the 90s. I don't know if you remember this, Dimitri, but she was arrested in the past with Diddy because she had a firearm in her purse when some kind of commotion broke out. And so I believe that she revealed that like Diddy had made her carry that. So that's what they were referencing. And that's how her name is kind of being brought in here. It seems like there's a lot of celebrities being brought in here. Kid Cudi with his car being like exploded by Diddy, like all sorts of things. So they mentioned arson. They mentioned kidnapping at gunpoint, but he's not facing charges for those things. Why could that be? They did also say during the press conference that more charges could be coming. Like, what's going on?
You know, cases like this that involve a long stretch of time and are typically charged in conjunction with other people, they tend to evolve, right? That's why Cassie filed that lawsuit so long ago. The search warrant was executed so long ago. These investigations take a long time. And it's up to the government to determine when is the right time to initially bring charges, right? And obviously in a case like this, you're dating back many years, sometimes decades. So you may have statute of limitations concerns. So it depends on the evolution of the investigation. And only because charges were brought doesn't mean an investigation stops, right? We keep going. And so more charges could be brought. That's why they always say that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that if something wasn't brought up as a charge now, it won't be used in the trial as a way to make out other bigger charges. And that also doesn't mean that it won't be used to directly charge him at some point down the line.
Mm-hmm. And so a couple of these civil lawsuits have named his children, most notably King Combs or Christian Combs, as being involved in Diddy's, like, you know, kind of misdoings. So have you heard of a case like this where a father and son are both being accused of working together to perpetuate these sorts of, you know, sexual abuses against other people?
You know, I've heard of a few, not quite like this and not this high profile. But these things happen. Look, it's rare. It's rare to have something like this. This is so unusual, this case, in so many different ways. And that's just one of them. I mean, I can't remember. I threw out a few a little while ago, Weinstein and Epstein and others. I can't remember there being one that will likely be as big as this one will be as time passes because of so many of these moving parts. And you know, it'll be one that'll take this city by storm when it goes to trial.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of taking the city by storm, we saw the prosecution team, and it's all female. Is that normal in New York? Are they making a point here because of all of the abuses and violence against women, not only in this case, but just now globally going on? Like, it feels like we're at a pressure cooker moment, and this is personal, and they mean business, and this is, you know, on behalf of women everywhere, sort of a thing. Like, do you think that there's some kind of messaging behind that, or is it just the way that the chips fell here?
It's possible. Every lawyer in that office is a highly capable lawyer. You don't get into the Southern District of New York unless you're highly capable, unless you're skilled, unless you're experienced, unless you're highly educated, coming from typically top schools in the country, male or female, right? And I'm assuming that perhaps something like that may have played a role, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day. These are all capable folks. And the lawyers on the case now aren't necessarily the ones that'll be trying it. But if they are, I'm sure they'll know what they're doing.
Absolutely. So now, last question for you. When the video of Diddy viciously beating up Cassie and chasing her and just stomping her, all sorts of things came out, he released an apology video. He said he was in a bad place. He took responsibility, well, without taking responsibility fully. Do you think that that is something that is going to be played in this trial? What sort of a role do you see it playing? Because they do reference this a lot to show evidence of how women were trapped by him and not allowed to leave. This is what would happen to them when they tried to leave. She was trying to freak off in 2016 when he did this to her.
So look, these kinds of videos, even if Cassie won't be a direct witness, which she may, but even if she won't be a direct witness, there's something in the law called character evidence, right? Evidence that you involve in a trial to show a jury a certain propensity, right? That a person may be prone to committing certain conduct. That's generally not allowed, right? We like for our trials to be based on the facts, the relevant facts, and not because the person is a bad person, violent, and has a bad history, and so on and so forth. But obviously, as everything in the law, there are exceptions to these things. And the exceptions basically involve connecting this character evidence, this prior evidence, prior bad acts, they call them, Molyneux evidence in the state courts, right? Connecting these things to the pending charges. So if there's a common scheme, if there's a common plan, if there's some correlation between the conduct and the charges that is so close, they will contextualize for the jury what happened in the case, and judges will let that in. So videos like this, and maybe other videos that they find in the seizures and other information, will likely be contested as it relates to whether or not it's character evidence or whether or not it's proper bad act evidence. And so we'll have a big fight over many, many months about what videos, what recordings, what any piece of evidence can come in this case, because stuff like this, obviously, if you're a defense lawyer, is real harmful.
And so with the case most likely being a closed case, what are we going to be privy to when it comes to these things, discovery, and when the case actually starts rolling out? Like, what can we expect to know? Will we have to wait for only a few select journalists to feed us the information, or is anything else going to happen? So there are public filings and public appearances and other public actions and acts that will take place in this case as time passes. Certainly the public won't be privy to all the evidence in the case. That won't happen. The public that's there for the trial will be seeing the evidence unfold, and perhaps they'll be reporting back in that regard. But this isn't a case that the public will be privy to in all of its aspects, at least not during the trial, right? After the trial, who knows? But during the trial, that won't happen. And I'm sure, if you're a lawyer, you have ethical restrictions. You can't just kind of really, the lawyers are the ones that will have the evidence in this case, and they're not the ones that are going to just throw it out places because there are restrictions as to that. And the judge will, I'm sure, let everybody know, hey, we know what's going on. This is a big case. Everybody knows about it. Don't mess around, right? They do it in every case. And so I don't think in the Southern District of New York that'll happen to any real degree. All right. Well, guys, listen, that was Dimitri from D-Shack Law. Dimitri, can you tell us a little bit about what you've got going on your channel? Will you be discussing more of this case on your channel as well? And like, from what angle? Because I know you also teach law. So is it to, in case anybody here is a legal student or interested in pursuing law, what do you got going on? Sure. So what I got going on is what I've been talking about today, right? I do cases all the time, and that's my primary job. And I'm in courthouses defending cases and litigating cases every day of my life. And that's what I do. And I do other things because I like the law and I'm interested in it, right? And so I have this YouTube channel that you've been mentioning at D-Shack Law. So folks can subscribe, and there's a bunch of legal analyses there and other tidbits of information. And of course, as you can tell, I'm an easy guy. And if you have any questions of any kind, please feel free to email me. You can find my email in various places online is ds@dshacklaw.com. And I'm always here to help. I'm here to inform. And if anybody needs me, please reach out. Amazing. Thank you so much yet again. You are just amazing. You're always so helpful to our channel. So guys, please show Dimitri some love, show him some support. Head over to his YouTube channel, D-Shack Law. Dimitri, I'm going to continue reading the detention notes. I'm almost done here. So I'm going to let you go for now. And I can't wait to see you for another video. Take good care of yourself. Okay. Appreciate it. Take care. Take care. Thank you. Bye. Oh, amazing. Honestly, you guys, I feel so lucky to have Dimitri here on my channel, right? He is so helpful and so nice, you guys. So if any of you guys ever have any legal questions or anything like that, or just like advice, maybe you're pursuing law, I don't know, make sure to contact Dimitri. Again, his channel is right below over there, DShack Law, and he also just gave you guys his email address. If you forgot it, like me, you can definitely check it out on the About page of his YouTube channel, okay, you guys? And of course, as this case progresses, I will continue to have him on my channel as well, okay, you guys? So just some more tidbits over there. Hi, Portland, Maine. Is that the Portland? No, is Portland, Maine the same as the Portland where they did Love is Blind this season? Or is that Portland like next to Seattle? It's been a while, you guys. I'm not good on the geography there anymore. So let's continue to section D when we talk about the weight of the evidence. So we're on page 13 out of 16 for those of you who are keeping up of the detention memo. So let's go. In considering the danger and risk of flight presented by the defendant, the court is also required to consider the weight of the evidence against the defendant. The defendant faces a strong and powerful case here, only magnifying the danger he could present to others, especially victims and witnesses ready to testify against him, and the risk he flees. The evidence in this case consists of a vast amount of victim and witness testimony, electronic evidence, physical evidence, and subpoena returns, and other voluntary productions, among other things. As to witnesses, to date, the government has conducted interviews with over 50 victims and witnesses, many of whom saw or experienced the defendant's abuse. So again, we've got to take a breather here. A different port near Boston. Oh, cool. Well, how do you, Raina? Now I'm thinking of Boston cream donuts. Yummy. Tess, thank you, Grace, for keeping us in the loop. Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for being interested in this because, you know, again, my friends in real life, especially here in Paris, they don't really even know Diddy. They don't know Cassie. They don't know these people. So they've got nobody to talk to but you guys. Thank you, Grace, for keeping us in the loop. Okay. Thank you. And yeah, I was surprised when Dimitri said that this was most likely going to be a closed trial. I really was expecting it to be open, but I really do hope that they will make an exception and, open at least some of it for us because this is major. Over 50 victims. He really thought he was going to get away with this forever. And he did for such a long time, 50. Many of these witnesses corroborate one another, and their accounts are similarly consistent with the other types of evidence discussed below. The government only expects that number to continue to grow, given that the investigation, which is now public, is ongoing. The electronic evidence is similarly vast. The government has sought and obtained numerous search warrants for such evidence, in addition to obtaining evidence voluntarily from certain victims and witnesses. Setting aside devices seized in connection with the defendant's arrest, the government has obtained over 90 cell phones, laptops, and cloud storage accounts, as well as over 30 other electronic and storage devices, such as hard drives, thumb drives, cameras, and a surveillance system. This electronic data comes from the defendant himself, as well as co-conspirators, victims, and witnesses, and chronicles much of the defendant's criminal activity as it occurs. So they've got 130 hard pieces of evidence. They've got over 50 victims. He's done. Diddy, you're spending a minimum of 15 years behind bars. They said he was 54, so he'll be out when he's 70. If he gets lucky and he only gets those 15 years, he can get a whole lot more. The evidence also consists of physical evidence, which was seized pursuant to search warrants executed at the defendant's residences in Los Angeles and Miami, as well as on his person and the persons of certain co-conspirators. In addition to the firearms and electronics discussed above, the physical evidence and includes other evidence of freak-offs, including over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and personal lubricant. You guys, this is the stuff that we were talking about earlier, right? Like the lube, the baby oil, this, and the fact that these freak-offs were going for days at a time. You guys, this was some truly, truly depraved behavior that these people were being subjected to. Thank you, Raina. Hey, Campfire's here. Hey, Campfire. How are you? I hope you're doing well. Happy fall. The leaves are turning colors and everything, so it means it's fall. Happy fall to you. It's so nice to see you here. Thank you for joining. Why the hell is it a closed trial? So Dimitri, he was just on here, you guys. Dimitri Shaknovich of Dushak Law. He was just giving us some perspective from a lawyer. He was saying that typically trials like this, where they are the federal trials and they're the serious, they're going to be close. But again, I'm really, really hoping and praying that there is an exception here, that this could be open. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but the Young Thug trial, it's also a RICO trial and it's an open trial. So why can't this be? You know, I really, really hope so, because I feel like this is so important and so instrumental in helping to end the disgustingness and the depravity and just the abuses that have been perpetuated in Hollywood all this time, right? Yes, you guys, please show some love to Kempire's YouTube channel. He, I'm sure, has already got a video covering the situation and other videos as well. I know, Kempire, you were just live for your Braxton family recap as well. So if you guys are into the Braxtons, definitely make sure to check out Kempire as well. Okay, you guys? And the amount of lube and stuff like that, yeah, over 1,000. It has been crazy, 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 you guys. Crazy, honestly. And remember, children were mentioned, but I haven't yet seen any of them in the detention memo. It's something that I saw in the official government Twitter. So I'm still waiting. We're only on page 14 out of 16. We're almost there, and I haven't yet seen that. I've seen women and others be mentioned. So perhaps they're being hinted at there, but not yet fully. Okay, you guys? Finally, the evidence includes records obtained pursuant to over 300 grand jury subpoenas and other voluntary productions. These materials come from over 100 entities and individuals, including communications providers, tech companies, social media companies, banks, and other, oh, let me make it a little bit bigger, okay, you guys? Banks and other financial institutions, airlines, hotels, car services, and other travel-related companies, escort services, and even the defendant's companies and wealth management firm. Together, this evidence, as well as other evidence gathered, powerfully demonstrates the defendant's guilt and counsels in favor of detention. The defendant's proposed bail package is insufficient. That's Section E. For all the reasons set forth herein, there is no bail package that can reasonably assure the safety of others in this case, where the defendant is engaged in a decades-long pattern of violence against women and others. So there you go, the and others. That could be men, that could be non-binary people, that could be children. And has used his wealth and power to ensure that his criminal conduct goes unpunished through manipulative and obstructive conduct. In particular, the bail package proposed by defense counsel is insufficient because it fails to adequately protect others from the defendant's violence, impose measures to prevent and detect obstruction, or prevent the defendant from accessing his vast resources, including millions of dollars in cash, to evade prosecution, or dissipating those assets to avoid financial penalty for his crimes. Defense counsel has proposed certain bail conditions, including home detention with electronic monitoring and a $50 million bond secured by the defendant's Miami property. These conditions are, well, first of all, he's selling his property, so it's not going to be all that secure, right? These conditions are mainly insufficient to address the legitimate concerns set out above. In particular, given the defendant's history of engaging in obstructive conduct, the court must reject the insufficient conditions proposed by defense counsel, which do nothing to prevent and detect such conduct. For example, in United States v. Ferranti, a case in which the defendant was charged with witness tampering and where obstruction remained an ongoing concern, the Second Circuit reversed the district court's release of the defendant on bail conditions because the $1 million bond, which was secured by properties owned by the defendant and members of his family, only deterred flight, not danger. More specifically, the Second Circuit found the district court's bail condition intended to address witness tampering. So they're saying, listen, this dude has already gotten to witness tampering. Look at the other cases that have happened in the past when we let people who already were witness tampering go free. It's just not a good idea. Notably, the defendant's previously proposed conditions do not include provisions related to his access to electronic devices, which, as outlined above, the defendant uses to engage in obstructive conduct. Nor do the proposed conditions include information related to or restrictions on access to the defendant's vast resources, including multiple bank accounts in the names of the defendant's business, and deep cash reserves, which could facilitate the defendant's flight. Similarly, the proposed conditions fail to protect against the dissipation of assets, which may be subject to forfeiture or penalties on the charges in the indictment. Finally, the proposed conditions do not include conditions that would limit the defendant's potential to engage in violence or abuse, such as drug and treatment and surrender of all firearm. And I think that they are very right here. Like, we don't know that he won't blow up another car or someone's house or go kidnap somebody else at gunpoint if we let him roam free. So now the conclusion, guys, we made it to the end. This is the first time that I have read a full court document from front to back. Oh, my voice. As set forth above, the defendant poses an ongoing and significant danger to the community, has repeatedly engaged in obstructive conduct, and presents a serious risk of flight. The government respectfully submits that the defendant cannot meet his burden of overcoming the statutory presumption in favor of detention. There are no conditions of bail that would assure the appearance in compliance with the defendant or the safety of others. Accordingly, any application for bail should be denied. Boom! Damian Williams, United States Attorney. And so now we're also going to go back here and see the ladies involved in this. Like I told you guys, the attorneys prosecuting Diddy are women. Meredith Foster, Emily A. Johnson, Madison Reddick Smizer, Christy Slavic, Mitzi Steiner. Hat off to all of you. And of course, Dan, you as well. This is major, 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 major. Okay, let me catch back up, you guys. So, Millie, you've got to be a special kind of sick to come up with the idea of freak-offs. J'espère qu'il ne reverra plus jamais la lumière du jour. Et moi aussi, Millie. Oui, 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 il faut qu'il crève en prison. So, she's saying that she hopes that Diddy will never see the light of day again. And I said, me too. I hope that he croaks in prison. Campfire, it's been a busy 25 hours. It really has. It truly, truly has. Campfire, I woke up to this news. So, you know, when I wake up, and it's a bad habit, the first thing I do is I start scrolling like Twitter. And I saw the news. And I said, oh my God, what time did this happen? This happened at 10 p.m. Eastern for you guys. And I just was like, okay, I gotta find out everything that happened here because this is incredible. The day has finally come. It's been almost a year since Cassie filed that groundbreaking lawsuit that opened the door to all of this. She filed in November of 2023. Here we are mid-September, and he is finally being brought down. Millie, they got him. They sure did. Hi from Kenya. Kenya, oh, Millie, you're a Kenyan who speaks French too, like me. I'm Kenyan as well. I don't speak Swahili, but I speak Luo. Thanks for the love, everyone. Yes, you guys, lots of love to Campfire. Campfire, you are so adorable. Usher was a child Bieber. So, you guys, there's just so much. There really, really is, you guys. There's just so much to cover. So, and again, I'm really wondering if Usher and Justin are going to be brought up because, again, children were hinted at. And Usher and Bieber are the only children that I can think of. So they talked about Cassie, right, without naming her. They talked about J-Lo without naming her. They kind of hinted at Cassie's husband, the fitness instructor, right, Alex Fine. Don Richard is someone who I think is going to be a parent. I think Aubrey O'Day is going to be a parent here. But will Usher and Bieber? That I do not know yet. But I believe they've knocked on every single person's door here. Shamanda says, never forget how much that pedo from Australia was selling the demise of Daisy for. Only rich people can pay for those videos at those prices. It says so much. Honestly, I don't know what it is about money that just brings out this oof, of people, this ugly side of people. I don't think it's money themselves. I think these people already have this side of them, and it just allows them to buy out people from under them and hold all this power. And it is just crazy. And yes, I do need tea. I just bought some Japanese tea actually. So I'm going to go brew that up, you guys. And yes, this really started around Cassie. Cassie did this. She really, really did. She did. I'm so proud of her. And I really hope that everybody, who's affected by this and is able to come forward chooses to come forward, because this is the time to bring Diddy down. This is for the collective, and I understand some people might be too traumatized to even think about testifying. And I totally empathize with that. But people who are able to, I really, really hope that they do, but it sounds like a lot of people have. 50, they said over 50 people, over 120 pieces of like hard drives, video files, cloud stuff, like phones. This is major. I think he's going to get a minimum of 15 years, but I'm hoping it is life, you guys. It's over. Anyway, you guys, thank you so, so much for tuning in. This is the longest live I've ever done. 2 hours, almost 2 hours and a half. Amazing. Thank you all so, so much for tuning in. I am going to continue to bring you the coverage from this case. I'm sure Kempire is going to continue to bring you the coverage from this case. Don't forget about our friend Dimitri as well from DShack Law. He's going to continue to bring you the coverage, and he's going to continue to hop on this channel and provide a legal perspective as well. So please make sure to support as many grassroots channels as you can through this. Okay. We're all working very hard to bring you guys the information. Okay. Thank you so, so much, you guys. Have a great day. Have a great evening wherever you are in the world. And I will see you in my next video. I have a couple pre-recorded that I need to put out now. All right. Take care, you guys. Bye.